Welcome to Paint a Beautiful Picture. Yesterday, we talked about addiction and how you should address that with your child. But what if you already are the parent of an addict? What if you have a 16-year-old who's a raging alcoholic? And trust me, I have known some severe alcoholics by time 14 years old, very truthfully. I have a good friend who has a daughter that's 17 years old. She's an extreme addict, doing a lot of things, like almost anything she can get her hands on. How in the world do you love somebody like that? Really and truly. They drive you crazy. They steal your money. They steal your car. They just get into all kinds of destructive things. And usually as the parent, you bear a lot of that because you actually love them and care about them. You have to watch this kind of self-destructive pattern, and you wish to goodness you could do something. So we're going to talk today about, I said loving the alcoholic, but that's kind of the most classic and traditional addiction that we know of and that we understand. And probably, really truthfully, it's one of the more prevalent ones in our culture even yet. So I think it's a valid question to say, how in the world are you supposed to love somebody like that? Because they're not the easiest people to love. Good question. Let's address that. All right, so any kind of addiction. So talk about a gambling addiction. Let's talk about throwing some cash down and wrecking your life, right? No kidding. Let's talk about someone who's addicted to pornography for a second. That person's mind and spirit and life is so preoccupied with putting all this into their head, they're really kind of disconnected from the real world. That means they're not available to love you. They're not available to love their children. They're not available to love their parents. They're not really available to be a dependable, reliable, hardworking coworker who contributes equally. Yeah, like these things are hard to love, right? So what are you supposed to do? Okay, A, big one. If you've listened to me at all, you can believe that I'm going to say this out loud. Admit the truth. Don't go, oh, it's not that bad. And yeah, I know they have a problem, but it's manageable. I'm so sorry. If you've ever seen the Blue Book, the first thing you have to do is admit that this is unmanageable. The addict doesn't really have control over their life or their problem, and certainly not their addiction. So don't enable them by helping them and going, oh, it's not that big of a thing. Admit the truth. This is a huge problem. And it may not be huge yet, but if it doesn't change, it has the potential to destroy this person's life and, frankly, parts of mine along with it, especially if it's your child. Okay? So don't try to fudge this and back around it and make it littler. No, admit the truth. This is a huge problem. Okay? Number 2, admit how it affects you. If there's anything that Al-Anon or ACOA, that's Adult Children of Alcoholics, addresses, it's that not only does the addict have certain kinds of behavior patterns, but the person who lives with them or loves them, they have consequent kind of mirror-imaged behavioral issues, okay? So you go, oh yeah, it's not really affecting me much. Really? You need to tell that story to someone else because I'm not buying it. No joke. It affects you. It affects you a lot, okay? If you've ever seen a really severe alcoholic, I mean the kind of guy who's drunk on his behind by 6:30 at night and he just got off of work at 5, right? And the kids have to tiptoe around and he's liable to get really mad and throw stuff and yell and scream and be verbally abusive and, very frankly, let's tell the truth, oftentimes physically abusive too. You're going to try to sit here and tell me this doesn't affect you? Wow. I'm sorry. You need to give that story to somebody else who might believe it. So you have to admit this is affecting you. It's affecting you a lot. It's not affecting you in a good way. And 3, you have to be willing to go get some help because you're not going to handle this by yourself. I promise you, if you're dealing with a 14 or a 15-year-old addict, yeah, you aren't going to handle this by yourself. No joke. So get your hands on a professional. And as I have described to you before, you go talk to someone once, maybe twice. They really are not hitting you where you live and it doesn't feel very helpful. Don't keep going to them. There are hundreds of thousands of counselors here in the United States of America. Go to someone you can relate to, that you can listen to, that you respect. Yeah, by all means, don't go to someone and go, well, they told me he was really great and I'm kind of like, I'm stuck with this person. No, you're not. Okay? Get help and get help from someone you trust and someone you can work with. Okay? All right. With all that being said, we'll talk about intervention. I've had people go, well, if I do that, they're going to hate me forever and they're probably going to be mad. Remember, we were talking about loving the alcoholic or the addict. Loving someone means doing what is best for them, even if it involves personal cost. So what if they're mad at you? They'll get over it sometime. I didn't say in the next year or two. They will get over it sometime. And in fact, many times, if it sticks, they'll appreciate it later. Do you recall yesterday I told you that the average alcoholic goes through treatment between 4 and 6 times before they really get a hold of it and stop drinking? Do you understand that for a kid to learn the multiplication table, they have to actually go through it between 200 and 300 times? We human beings need repetition before we really get our hands on a difficult concept. Do you understand that? So if you think it's unrealistic for an alcoholic or a drug addict to go through a treatment program 4 or 5 times, let me assure you, that's not that unrealistic, okay? You have to intervene in someone's life. If they don't want to admit the problem, they don't want to acknowledge to themselves how much it is affecting them negatively and impacting all the people around them. You, as the parent, you're probably going to have to intervene, okay? So an intervention may be as simple as sitting around a table with all of your family members involved, perhaps even the teenagers' grandma and grandpa, and everyone's saying, we noticed that you have a problem. You haven't been going to school. You've been, grandma says, you stole $20 out of my wallet last weekend. And grandpa's like, yeah. And a couple weeks ago, like $600 worth of my tools were gone. Everyone's sitting there. They're going to find out things they didn't know before. And most likely, initially, the person might be really defensive and really angry and push it back at you. I can't believe you're accusing me. And there are a lot of things you can expect them to say back. But in the end, this is what you say. We all love you here. We are not here to get on your back. We are not here to cause you trouble. We're not even here to accuse you of anything. We are saying out loud to you what we have said to each other, what we've been concerned about, what we have seen. You come home and your pupils are this big and pitch black, and you're all weird, and you're certainly not acting like yourself, and there's no question about who stole what, because you were the only one there, no one else had opportunity, and you have all this cash, and then it disappears, and you're out with your friends till 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I may not be a rocket scientist, but I'm well aware that there's something going on with you. It's been going on for a while now, and we need to do something about this. So in an intervention, you acknowledge the problem, you tell them what's been going on and what you have seen and what you've experienced, and truly you need to acknowledge how it's been affecting you. So if someone sits there and cries, or someone expresses anger, not in an inappropriate way, I mean verbally without attacking the person, saying, I'm really angry that you stole that cash out of my wallet, dude. That was not okay. Actually, I know a person who got money for Mother's Day and a drug-addicted teenager stole it. So one of her children gave her money and the drug-addicted one stole it right out of her wallet. Not cool. And those are the kinds of things that addicts do. You say, I'm really angry about that. You don't jump on them. You're stupid. I taught you better. No. That's not an appropriate intervention. It's definitely not love. Okay. But I'm really angry. I was really disappointed in you. I'm constantly frustrated. Used to be a straight A student. Now you're barely getting D's. Okay. All of this is related to, and I can show you why. So you express your emotions to them. You can even say the opposite side. I want to be proud of you. I am proud of who you are. I know who you are. But I'm extraordinarily disappointed in what you are doing. You're just flushing your life down a toilet for the sake of cocaine? For the sake of getting drunk on the weekends? For the sake of getting drunk every single day with your buds? Yeah, dude, totally not okay. Or listen, sweetheart, because don't worry, plenty of girls get addicted. You can't keep doing this because it's going to take you to a very bad place, okay? So you intervene. Then, ideally, once you get to the place of being willing to intervene, your next question or your last question is, are you willing to get help? Well, I don't think I need help. Well, guess what? 6 of us around this table who are adults, we think that you do need help. We probably have a whole lot more collective life experience than you're ever going to get. You're not going to live to be 400 years old. And so guess what? Respectfully, we're asking you, will you go get help? Here's probably the crux of the issue in certain relationships. You have a 17-year-old who's going to be 18 in a month or two. That might be a little more difficult. You have a 14 or a 15-year-old. You better stand up, be the parent, and I'm not joking around. If you have to call the police to get them to escort this young person to a rehab center, that's perfectly acceptable. As I've told you before, do you want the police to take them to juvenile for things that they did that they're going to end up there against their will, arrested and in trouble? Or would you rather have the police escort them to a rehabilitation facility where they might have some chance of starting to deal with their addiction? That's an extremely fair question, Dad. That's a very realistic question, Mom. So, are you willing to get help? And then say, I give you my word. Through all of this process, I'm going to support you. Because love supports. And as we've discussed before, love is selfless. Oh, don't think that the hurt is just going to disappear when they start dealing with their addiction. It is not, okay? So you have to love them in spite of the hurt. You have to love them in spite of the anger. You have to get past your own self and your emotional state, which is legitimate, incidentally, and get to the place where you can support them. And so when they go into intervention, they're in a facility, you've got to go to family counseling sessions. This is not all going to be easy for you, okay? You're going to find out things about you or your family dynamics. That's not going to be all that comfortable for you either. And that's why you have to make that commitment that I'm going to support you and we are going to get through this together, okay? Let me tell you a few things that loving an alcoholic or loving an addict is not. It is not laying a guilt trip on them, hoping that that guilt is going to get them to change. It is not manipulating them back, because lots of alcoholics are manipulative. And a lot of enablers are as manipulative or more. So it is not manipulation. And it is most assuredly not coercion. Okay? Just like some alcoholics try to get physically violent or very verbally violent and will assault you, the codependent, co-alcoholic that they live with is often just as terrible. No kidding. So you want to get to a place where you are healthy and they are healthy. Let me put it on a plane all of us understand. You guys know that I broke my arm. And I went to one facility 5 times, actually, in 6 days. And they kept doing various things to my arm, but they didn't do it correctly. And as a nurse, thank God, I knew it. So the first time, my fingers were blue. I couldn't move them. They were freezing cold. They didn't cast it correctly. Had to go back to the emergency room, get that cast cut off. The next time they casted it, they compressed a nerve, and I couldn't feel nor move my middle finger nor my thumb. I had to go get that cast cut off and another thing put on. And ultimately, I had to have surgery. Let me tell you, this thing hurts, okay? Healing takes time and lots of professional, competent help. And we don't think anything about that. I mean, I wouldn't sit home with a broken arm and go, okay, well, I won't ever be able to use my hand again, and that's okay. No. I'm going to go get help. When you have an alcoholic, when you have an addict, you're aiming for health. And it may take multiple times and lots of visits to various professionals or various places in order to come to a place of health. Quite a while back, I talked to you about ways of coping, and I said that drinking or getting high or looking at pornography, there are lots of addictive behaviors that are a way of coping, and it's a way of coping with pain. And so as that person who's the addict is going through getting unaddicted or at least getting clean so they can live life straight and look at things straight. That means they're going to look at their hurt and their anger straight on. And if you have a teenager or a young adult as a parent, you're going to hear about some of that hurt and some of that anger because it's very likely that you or things in your home were the causative factors in that. You have to have the courage to hear that. And that's why I said you love them through this. That takes self-sacrifice on your part. Okay? All right. So you're going to love them. That means that, as I've said before, when someone needs love the most, it's often when they're at their worst, right? So this is definitely some of the worst you're going to see. And you need to love them. You need to express that love to them. You need to demonstrate that love to them by doing what is best for them, even when it's really challenging for you to do that, okay? I want you to know there are tons of resources available to you, and you need to start looking at them, and you need to do your absolute best to be good to yourself. Don't beat yourself up about mistakes that you've made. Be good to the addict, because it's really easy to be angry at them and to blow it all over them like you did this and you did this and you didn't do that. And I understand that really well, but that doesn't help anything, okay? So go through the steps and love them in the middle of their problem, okay? Now, let me say this to you. It isn't easy, but it's definitely possible, okay? And I want you to write me, email me, send me every comment you can get your hands on, whatever you have to say to me. But I want you to love that person in your life, even when they're in trouble, even when they're not doing very well, even when the struggle is real day after day after day, so that your child is positively certain in their mind, my mom, my dad, she really loves me. He really loves me in spite of my problems, in spite of my challenges. The challenge question for you today is, do I have an addiction? Do any of my children have an addiction? Am I willing to love them through it? It's been great having you with me today, and I will look forward to hearing from you, and I will meet you again here soon. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.